Hello and welcome to the Theological Family Ministry Podcast, where a podcast is dedicated to encouraging and equipping parents as well as children's workers and even pastors to disciple the children that God has put under their spiritual care and influence. We want to further the conversation about what we believe. That's our theology, how it affects how we parent, how we minister, how we teach, and how we live. Now, as always, I'm joined by
Pastor Anthony Trussoni. I am the effective April 22nd of this year. I'm family and student pastor at Faith Family Church in Finksburg, Maryland.
All right, yeah, Tony is taking his talents down to a new church. So how many kids are going to get saved, Tony? Not one, not two, not three?
Exactly, yeah. So hundreds of thousands, of course. So.
Hundreds of thousands. Well, that would be a blessing. And I'm Ben Palaz. I'm the family and children's discipleship pastor at Curtis Baptist Church in Augusta, Georgia. We've got a special guest today who's also in transition. I'm the only one that's not. I mean, I may be moving offices soon, but that's about it. But we've got with us Peter Witkowski today. And Peter, we want to get to know you in just a minute. But Peter is the associate pastor of preschool and children currently at First Baptist Church in Eastman, Georgia. So he's kind of close to me, but he's going to be transitioning to the role of senior pastor. Is it Amosville?
It's Amosville, that's correct.
Amosville, Virginia. Okay, so he's moving a lot closer to Tony, and so he's going to be the head shepherd there and preaching God's word. So we're excited for him as he makes that transition. Now, I know baseball season's getting started, and from what I've seen on your blog, Peter, you're a baseball fan, and then Tony and I are both big fans. So, Peter, who is your team that you pull for?
Well, Ben and Anthony, thanks for having me on the podcast with you. I'm excited to be here today. I'm happy and proud to admit that I am a Cubs fan. For most of my life, that has not threatened anyone. But that changed back in 2015 when we got good, and then again in 2016 with winning the World Series. So my life is complete in that regard when it comes to sports.
Let's stop recording, man. I don't want to do this anymore.
Nice. Well, yeah, he's grew up as a Brewers fan, so that was kind of a bitter spot for him there. But he's now an Orioles fan. So, but we were interviewing. I don't know. Do you know Chap Bettis, or do you know of him?
I'm not real familiar with that name.
Okay, he planted a church up in Rhode Island. He was a pastor there for about 25 years. And anyway, he's authored a book called The Disciple Making Parent.
Okay.
And so he's got a ministry called the Apollos Project, and anyway, we had a chance to interview him, and he's from Alabama, but then he moved up to New England, and so he told his kids they've got the best of both worlds. They're both Alabama Crimson Tide fans and Patriot fans, and everybody hates them. So
and they always win. So I mean, they're set.
Yeah. Now, I feel like for him, that's worthy of beginning the church discipline process. For Peter's rooting for the Cubs. I feel like just go to the last step immediately.
Well, it does talk about that, and First Timothy with it. The elder just go 2-3 witnesses, go public, and rebuke them for the benefit of the church. But
that's right.
But I like to say
today, actually.
Okay, 2 witnesses and going down.
That's right. Well, so today we want to talk to Peter about building relationships in the church versus programs, or those two working together. And often as a church gets established, what happens is programs start popping up for different interest groups, for different ages, stages, across the lifespan. And Peter wrote an article last year on his blog, and we'll give you that information later. This is Programs Will Not Fix Our Church. And as he puts it, if you're alive, we have something for you. We tend to assume that going to attendance at a program equals discipleship and growth. And that's not actually the case, and I think all of us would agree on that. So we want to hear more about that. Peter's kind of hating on the programs, and so we want to talk about that and how churches can end up neglecting relationships. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation myself. But before we get into that, Peter, tell us. You've given us a little insight into who you are, but just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm currently the pastor of preschool and children at First Baptist Eastman here in Eastman, Georgia, and transitioning at the end of April to go up to Amosville and be their senior pastor. So excited about that. I'm married to April. We've been married a little over 5 years, and we have 4 kids together. Our firstborn was born prematurely and died a few hours after birth, and then we have Luke, who's with us, and he is soon to be 4, which is hard to imagine. And then we have Lily, who's soon to be 2, and then we have another one on the way as well at the beginning of May. So we're I like to say we're just doing it all. We're going to move, we're going to have a baby, just do it all at once.
Get a dog too, you know.
Yeah. I know all about that moving stuff with around the baby. We moved to Maryland with a 3-week-old, so
very, very nice. Yeah, and that was one of those things I talked through with my wife. You want to go before, you want to go after, and she's like, "Hey, let's go before." And at this point, the baby's all self-contained, which is a little bit nice, and just get it done. So
don't have to worry about it getting out of the car seat or anything.
That's right. That's right. Just need one seat at this point. Yeah, it changes here in a few weeks, but right now, yeah.
Okay, Tony, you can go.
All right. Now, how did you get involved in family and children's ministry, Peter?
Yeah, well, the story goes back to I was 14. I then college and children's pastor at the Bible Church of Little Rock, Jeff Protz, gave me a call and said, "Hey, you want to lead the children's ministry or kind of like a Bible study time during one of the care group nights?" And I said, "Sure, I'll be open to do that." He found out I was 14. Technically, was too young. But came back to me and said, "Hey, you know what? There's really no one else to do it. So if you want to do it, go for it." And so with all the wisdom and ingenuity of a 14-year-old, I stepped into that and literally sent a kid home with broken glasses my first night.
Wow.
And it wasn't the most smooth transition, but Jeff worked with me and just really got through that process and through the years has just continued to build off that and give me a heart for kids. And more importantly, as I've grown older too, just really a heart for the family to see kids walking with the Lord, but also to see parents really discipling and working and training up their kids. Because what I've seen is, you get them for 2 hours a week, maybe 3 or 4 if you have, depending on the length of your service and things.
Yeah.
But they have them all week, and so
Amen.
Really, how do we equip and empower parents?
Amen. Praise the Lord. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's great, yeah. So were you just a really mature 14-year-old, or did you look very mature, or that he wasn't aware of that?
Well, I hit 6 feet when I was 12, and I'm like 6'1", so I had that going for me. I only grew an inch after that. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't talk a lot. I know even the proverb says that, a fool seems wise if he doesn't speak, so I think I had that going for me as well as a young man.
Okay, very good. Well, so Peter, to kind of get into the thrust of the article that you wrote, and I think it's not just an article; it's it's something on your heart to live this out, help your church to. But how can it happen that church programs, and particularly ones that are weighted towards children and youth and even parents, how can those become substitutes for real relationships, and what might that look like?
Yeah, what I think can happen is often instead of asking, "Hey, are we really getting to know people? Are we really sharing our hearts? Are we really discipling people?" It almost becomes more like a punch card, for your favorite restaurant or smoothie place, where you get, hey, you come, and so you punch the card to show that you're there. And so you have all these kids coming to different events, and they're hearing the gospel, and they're having fun, hopefully, and that's good and that's proper. But at the end of the day, do they really know anyone? Has anyone really invested in their lives? Does anyone really know what's going on at home? Have there been any real meaningful questions discussed? Any real meaningful time for discipleship? And what I found is people aren't asking those questions, and in large part is because they are going to the program and they are coming to the thing. And so they're not even stopping and thinking, "Hey, I'm actually growing. Are my kids actually growing and maturing?" They're just, "Well, I've come, and the church says to come, and so I'm here." And so obviously everything has to be good, but then you get in the counseling room and you realize, man, there's just a lot of things that aren't good. And so that's been a lot of it, is that attendance almost equals discipleship. And there is a correlation. Obviously you see that in Hebrews 10, but there's got to be more to it than just showing up in a building and then walking back out.
That's right. Yeah. And my church has been here for over 140 years, and we're trying to move away from. We still have programs,
right?
But that I came and I filled the seat, and so I must be faithful. And it's not necessarily that I'm actually becoming more like Jesus, and so just trying to take apart that mindset, and that's not what Scripture calls us to. So that's good.
And I think that is so important, so true. I think it's so easy for all of us in ministry, and even parents, to treat children like robots, to treat young people like robots. Formulaically, you put this or that ingredient of this or that program in, and this or that comes out as a result of that. But people aren't like that. People are complicated. People are messy and imperfect, and you can't just work a simple formula in that way. And I think what's interesting is, as your emphasis on that kind of relationships as opposed to just programs, I found even with children, people don't respond to just being taught at, especially when they're in crisis. When somebody's in a situation of difficulty in their lives, that they might, that to be able to get to the point of a program, get to the point of a lesson, we need to delve deep into what's going on in their lives sometimes.
Right, and really have the opportunity to get to know them. I mean, I know you guys are in children's ministry, but I've seen this over and over again. I mean, kids, their faces light up if you just ask them questions, again, in an adult manner, but you're going after kids' questions like, "Hey, what's your favorite TV show?" or "What did you do this weekend?" Or you start those kind of conversations that can lead to many other things. But oftentimes, just the way we program things, we get rid of that space for those kind of things. Whether that happens outside of church in the home or at the church, we don't leave time for that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, how can church leaders and members in churches try to prevent this slide?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it has to go back to just the scriptural conviction and scriptural heart. You see this in Paul all over the place, like in Colossians, 1 Thessalonians, talking about, hey, I want to see people face to face. I want to be with them. And so there's a sense where yes, we're going to have a program, yes, we're going to teach, but also we really want to be with them and be communicating with them, eating with them. You see this with even in 3 John, where verses 13 and 14, where John's saying, hey, I can write a bunch of stuff to you. I can give you kind of a lesson, but I'd actually rather be there and talk with you and commune with you. And you can see this with Jesus and Mark 2 with 13 and 17, when he's eating with sinners, that this is the heart of it. It extends beyond the formal program. And the formal program is necessary. I mean, we can't have worship without some programming. But there's a sense where, okay, it's a huge component of the Christian life, but it's not the Christian life. And I think oftentimes we assume that. And so I think one of the best things leaders can do is to take a step back and even think through 1 Timothy 3, where it talks about pastors are supposed to be hospitable, which means people in your home. And so even as pastors, to step back and start modeling that of, hey, instead of spending all their time at church, which is not awful, we're actually going to spend more time at home, and not just to watch football or golf or whatever your hobby is, but to have people in our home for the purpose of getting to know them and loving them and praying with them and sharing with them, and also for the purpose of them seeing our lives, messy and all, so they see us discipline our kids, they see us, have to deal with the family struggles. I mean, I can think of, just we've had people in our home, and there's been some things where I look at my son, I'm like, what are you doing? And we got to deal with that, in the public eye to some degree. And so it's just good to do life together and to model that. And even that can spark conversations as people see us live our lives. So I feel like that's the first step, is for the pastors and the staff to realize, hey, instead of focusing all our time in church, we need to focus time in church. But let's focus time on building relationships outside of church, and even think through, do we have so much programming, we don't actually have time to build these relationships? And if that's the case, that's a problem.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I think an interesting way that I think that's shown to be so true is that in my wife and I's ministry, encouraging some family discipleship. One of the ways that we've really seen, in a surprising way, that atmosphere, that catch on, especially with one family, was for that family to interact with us in our home and see us actually fail and how we responded when we failed. And, because then it didn't become, the pastor, that high and haughty Pastor Tony at this programs, but, I'm Tony Tersoni, I'm an imperfect sinner, but, this is still true, and this is how we move forward in progress in discipleship of our family, even through when we fail and are imperfect.
Yeah, amen to that, and then often just even people seeing us fail, not that we should rejoice in failure or sin in anything, but when they see that, hopefully see us respond humbly, that eventually could open the door for all other kinds of conversations in a good way.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so Peter, is a church that's filled with lots of programs, and even ones that actually teach sound doctrine, but that's lacking in rich spiritual friendships of bearing each other's burdens, like Galatians 6 talks about, is that a healthy church?
Well, I would say it's on the spectrum, and it would probably be